In this video, we are covering lesson 2.3, the cultural and historical setting of Things Fall Apart. Things Fall Apart is the novel that we're reading this unit. And our objective for this lesson is to explain how the culture of a people influences the setting of a historical fiction text. So to start off, our essential question for the unit, what we're going to be answering throughout the unit and then on your embedded assessment at the end, is how does the cultural and historical setting of a story influence character development? So we're going to focus first today on the cultural and historical setting, seeing what it was like in the novel before we see how that influences character development. So first of all, let's talk about setting. So we know setting is time and place. You guys have talked about that since elementary school. We're going to be talking about two aspects of setting. The first is the physical environment. So like looking around, what do you see? So this is the time and place in which a story takes place. And the second part is the cultural environment. So maybe you see this, but it's also just like the vibe, right? Like social norms. What is typical in that environment? What are the conditions like? What's the atmosphere? This could be like social, it could be political, but in all of those things go together for cultural environment. Let's talk first about historical setting. So again, this is like what we can see, the time and place in which the story takes place. This also includes the context of that time period. The novel Things Fall Apart is historical fiction, which means that it is based on the actual history of that time period, what things were actually like, but they are fictionalized places and characters. Let's talk specifically about the historical setting in the novel. So this novel takes place in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The entirety of the novel covers before and after British colonization. We've talked already about colonialism, colonization, colonizers, when a group of people go to another place and take over that area, exploit the people, exploit the resources in that area. We're going to be talking in this lesson specifically about before British colonization. So what were the people like in Things Fall Apart before the British arrived? And the first part of the novel covers that. We don't have the British at all in the first part of the novel. The story takes place in a fictional village called Umuofia in the country of Nigeria. So the village itself is fictional, does not actually exist, and it never did. But it is portrayed as the way that a typical tribal village existed. And it is in the country of Nigeria, which actually exists, and it still does today. So it's on the western coast of Africa, right here along the coast. All right, let's shift now and talk about cultural setting. So the historical is the physical, literally what things were like at that time period in history. Culture is the shared beliefs, values, behaviors, and traditions that define a group of people or society. And we've got two aspects. We've got tangible and intangible. Tangible is things that you can reach out and touch, or you can hear, or you can smell. Intangible are more of the things that we feel. So tangible would be things like art, literature, food, fashion, music, and dance. So think about your own culture. Think about the music that you listen to versus what other music other people listen to from different cultures. Think about the foods that you eat versus the foods that people eat in other cultures. And then intangible are the things that we cannot touch. So these are like the beliefs, the values that we have, what's important to us, the customs. So think about like holidays, traditions. What do you do with your family, or what are things that you do or don't do with your family that other people do with theirs? The cultural setting and Things Fall Apart. We have this ethnic group called the Igbo or Igbo. So in if we're doing research, we'll have to look for Igbo, I-G-B-O. In the novel, it's spelled Ibo, I-B-O. And this is a picture of Igbo people around the time that the novel takes place. The Igbo practiced a polytheistic religion. Polytheistic means believing in multiple gods. This is a picture of a shrine where they would leave items in order to worship their gods. And we'll see many different facets of their religion in the story. But I wanted to draw attention to the fact that they believed in multiple gods. And then when the British arrived to colonize, they believed in one God. And that's a big part of the cultural collision that takes place. The Igbo were a patriarchal society. So that means like the men are in charge. And some ways that we see that are that men had multiple wives, and then families lived in compounds with the man as like the head of the compound. We're going to take a look in today's lesson at a description of the setting where the main character's family lives, and we can see like his hut within his compound and then his wives. And part of that patriarchal society is the government. And I put this in quotes because it's like a governing body that makes decisions for the group. And their government was an assembly of men, not women, who would debate issues and then make decisions for like their tribes as a whole. And then they would make decisions also about how to interact with other tribes. So if they were trading, if they had conflicts with other tribes, it was the men who would assemble and discuss how best to move forward. And last, we're going to talk about yams. So yams in the Igbo society in Things Fall Apart play a really significant role. They were extremely important, and we see that because every year they celebrate the Feast of the New Yam as a way to like honor the gods who make the land fertile and provide the yams. And yams were a way to determine a man's status. So the more yams that a man was able to farm, the higher his position within his community. We see yams as like a form of currency. They use yams to trade and like buy goods. And yams in West Africa look very different from like the yams or sweet potatoes that we know and we have like at Thanksgiving, right? So the West African yams look much more like a traditional white potato, whereas like our sweet potatoes are that orangey red color. And that concludes our video for cultural and historical settings for Things Fall Apart.